Good morning. Welcome to today's press conference. Our speakers today are Governor Tom Wolf, State Meteorologist Jeff Jumper, PEMA Director Randy Padfield, PennDOT Executive Deputy Secretary Melissa Petula, and Major Robert Kroll, Director of the Bureau of Patrol with the Pennsylvania State Police. And now, Governor Wolf.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you everybody for joining us. Pennsylvania, as you all know, is experiencing heavy rainfall from the remnants of Hurricane Ida that devastated the Gulf region. While the worst effects of the storm are expected to hit later today and into tomorrow, rainfall began in many places across the Commonwealth late last night and early this morning. And I want to thank all of the emergency personnel who are working today to keep the Commonwealth safe in this tough weather. In some places, we're already seeing flash flooding. And that flash flooding has affected, in some cases, the morning commute. And we expect to see additional instances of flash flooding, urban flooding, and river flooding throughout the day and into tomorrow. My administration has been monitoring this storm since before it first made landfall, and we are taking this very, very seriously. Yesterday, I signed a disaster emergency proclamation to help free up resources to help the Commonwealth prepare for the storm. And that allowed us to pre-position emergency crews and supplies in strategic places all across the Commonwealth. It also allowed me to activate the National Guard. We're doing everything we can to prepare for further rainfall and to prepare for potential flooding. But you can help mitigate this. Everybody in Pennsylvania can help mitigate the dangers of this storm. The best thing all of us can do right now is to stay home and stay safe. If you don't need to go out, stay off the roads today. Less traffic on the roads is going to help keep your neighbors and your community safer. And when we have fewer people on the road during a storm, emergency personnel can work faster and they can do their jobs more safely. So please, if you can stay home today, please stay home. And if you need to go out, follow the Pima, the PennDOT, and your local emergency officials for the latest updates on weather conditions in your area. Thank you. And now I'm turning things over to the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency State Meteorologist, Jeff Jumper. Jeff.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning, everyone. As the Governor spoke about, there is a heavy rain event ongoing from Ida and its remnants underway across the Commonwealth. We're already seeing impacts in western Pennsylvania and now starting to spread eastward. The southwest quarter of the state, most of it is under a flash flood warning at this time. We'll expect significant flash flooding through this evening for areas south of Interstate 80 and areas east of the US 15 corridor. We're under a rare level 4 out of 4 high-risk day for flash flooding. So imagine about a month to 2 months worth of rain falling in less than 24 hours. It's a significant day, and we typically don't see those. Only 13 of those have been issued since 2010 to cover the Commonwealth. Damaging wind and tornadoes are also possible later today in southeastern Pennsylvania as this storm system moves through, and we do have some of the heating from the daytime we're going to get mixed in and have the potential for those tornadoes and damaging wind gusts as the storm moves through. Heaviest rain, again, will continue to fall in the afternoon and evening hours. We'll see rapid rises on streams and creeks. We're already seeing that in western Pennsylvania. That'll continue to spread into central and eastern Pennsylvania today into tonight. And then we'll have to watch as the rain ends and clears out tonight. We'll have a couple of nice days, but we're going to still have to watch the rivers, the main stem rivers. Those will continue to rise as we head into the next couple of days before cresting, all the way from the western part of the state to the eastern part. So we'll have to continue to monitor that as a secondary threat. Again, please don't drive, walk, or navigate through any floodwaters. Most of the flood deaths in Pennsylvania between 2006 and 2018 occurred outside or in vehicles. So again, one of the biggest phrases that the Weather Service is asked to push along is turn around, don't drown. If you do approach a flooded roadway or waterway, please don't assume it's safe to drive through. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to PEMA Director Randy Padfield.
Oh, that's okay. All right, thank you, Jeff, and good morning, everyone. Over the last number of days, as Governor Wolf alluded to, we have watched the modeling on this storm, developed and refined our plans, and have, as of last evening, began executing those plans. As of late last night and early this morning, we have pre-staged National Guard personnel with high clearance vehicles at locations throughout the areas that are forecast to receive the highest impacts. We've activated the Pennsylvania Helicopter Aquatic Rescue Team with helicopters and rescue crews at National Guard aviation flight facilities at Fort Indian Town Gap and Johnstown. We've activated and pre-positioned swiftwater emergency response teams from the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission in South Central Pennsylvania. We've also mission assigned PA Task Force 1, which is actually returning from a previous deployment to the Gulf Coast states for Hurricane Ida, and assigned them on a state mission as a Type 3 USAR or Urban Search and Rescue Task Force with a water rescue package to stage in central Pennsylvania. We've also moved a number of swiftwater rescue teams from the northwest area of the state, which is not going to be impacted, to more central locations so they can rapidly respond to be able to assist counties. We've also alerted a number of other swiftwater rescue teams in the southwest for potential deployment to other locations in the state if needed. We've also activated our state all hazards incident management team and have pre-staged them here in Harrisburg to be able to assist with any needs. This was all done proactively to provide support to the counties and local jurisdictions should they need additional resources during this significant weather event. The one thing I'd like to point out is that all of these preparations are part of a much larger tiered response system to protect the public that starts with your local first responders, county 911 centers, and county emergency managers, and relies on local and very robust regional mutual aid plans. As of right now, Jeff indicated we are seeing impacts and flash flooding in western counties of the state. We are seeing some limited scale evacuations in low-lying areas and seeing some other impacts with closed roadways. We continue to be able to monitor the storm and to be able to assess any needs that the counties would have. All of the actions that we've taken so far to date is to really provide assistance to the counties if they need it and make sure those resources are relatively close so there's not a significant delay in getting them any assistance that they need. The next 12 to 18 hours will be the most crucial time or critical time where we will see the maximum impacts from this storm. We will continue to monitor the impacts across the state and respond to requests for assistance as needed, but we ask that the public do their part to assist. And Governor Wolf and Jeff actually reviewed a lot of this. We want them to remain aware of the potentially changing conditions around them so they can prepare and act accordingly. If you received the weather forecast 2 days ago, it has changed significantly, and we want people to stay up to date. You can do this by signing up for weather alerts through various sources or monitoring trusted media sources. We want you to avoid travel, especially during the high impact time of this storm. If you must travel, exercise caution, slow down, and do not drive through standing or moving water. Have a backup travel plan and use trusted resources to monitor, or trusted sources to monitor road conditions. Stay away from moving water and flooded areas and avoid wading in floodwaters due to the contaminants they contain. We have in the past had individuals that wandered out to be able to take a look at the force of moving water, been standing on the embankment, and unfortunately have been swept away and perished. We want to avoid that at all costs. And have an evacuation plan with at least 2 travel routes if you need to move from your residence to a safe location or higher ground. Unfortunately, we know all too well that individuals, homes, businesses, and public property will be impacted by this event. If you are one of those who is impacted, know that there are systems in place to assist you after the storm that start with your local and county emergency management agencies and includes numerous organizations that can provide assistance, such as the many voluntary organizations active in disasters. Prior to the press conference, Governor Wolf and I have been in contact with a FEMA regional administrator as well regarding this high impact event to discuss plans if we would need to get, or we would reach the thresholds for a federal disaster declaration to provide assistance. For more information on what to do, if you've been impacted, please refer to ready.pa.gov. Across the top, you will see a header called After an Emergency, where you can find valuable information regarding immediate post-emergency actions and resources that may be available to you. Now I'd like to turn it over to Melissa Batula from PennDOT for an update.
Thank you, Director Padfield, and I thank all of you for allowing us to be here with you today. I also want to thank and commend our committed teams at PennDOT and the Pennsylvania Turnpike for their ongoing work as we respond to Hurricane Ida. We were and remain in active communication with other agencies, other states, and our industry partners. Our crews have been preparing for this storm for the last several days, So they've been out cleaning debris from inlets and from under bridges, as well as making sure that they check on equipment and tools to be ready for the response. Right now, we're actively monitoring our roads and bridges, paying special attention to our secondary networks and our smaller bridges that might be more vulnerable during those heavy rains. So we currently have about 50 road closures, and as Director Padfield said, primarily in the southwest because they've had the rain the longest. Because there's been a great deal of rain over the last few weeks and the ground's already saturated, which means that there's a potential for landslides in those prone areas and quicker than normal rise in those small streams leading to the flash flooding. We are actively monitoring and responding to conditions statewide, and this work is going to continue throughout the storm and even into tomorrow as those creeks do crest, and also to give our teams an opportunity to go out and check the condition of both of those roads and bridges before they're reopened to make sure they're safe for passable conditions. We do want to remind the public yet again to please don't drive with roads that are covered with water. Even shallow, swiftly flowing water can wash a car from the roadway, and even the road surface itself may not be intact underneath the water. So never drive around the barricades or signs on closed roads. In fact, anyone who drives around barriers intended to close a road can face increased penalties if emergency responders are called to rescue monitors who disregard those signs. So again, turn around, don't drown. We do ask that you don't travel, but if you must, please closely monitor the weather conditions along your travel route. Do slow down, increase the travel distance between the vehicles, turn your lights on to make sure that you give yourself the best opportunity to react to those ever-changing conditions. We have seen several accidents already today that, again, were related to the storm, so please, again, give yourselves that extra distance to be safe. As far as your source of resource, 511pa.com is a continued resource for the latest travel information. 511PA is also available through your smartphone applications for iPhone and Android, by calling 511, or by following regional Twitter alerts that are accessible through the 511PA website. It's free and available 24 hours a day, provides traffic delay warnings, weather forecasts, traffic speed information, and access to more than 1,000 traffic cameras across the state. So please think of safety first today and every day. Thank you, and I'm now going to turn it over to Major Kroll from the Pennsylvania State Police.
Good morning. As you just heard, heavy rainfall from Ida is going to immediately impact the rural, urban, and suburban areas across Pennsylvania. The precipitation will cause streams to swell and overflow onto roadways throughout the Commonwealth. In addition to these immediate effects, later this week we could potentially see river flooding. The Pennsylvania State Police is committed to protecting anyone who may be in danger or distress. That being said, we want to prevent any potentially dangerous scenarios for people who must be out, as well as for the local first responders who will be responding to help keep people safe. We're echoing the same message that you just heard. Turn around, don't drown. It is never safe to walk or drive into flooded waters. Some people tend to underestimate the force and power of the water. A mere 6 inches of fast-moving water can knock over an adult. A foot of moving water can carry away a vehicle, and 2 feet will take most SUVs and trucks. Not only is driving into high water potentially dangerous for those inside the vehicle, it also impacts local first responders and law enforcement who are dedicated to keeping everyone safe by putting them in peril to respond to the incident. It can also put unnecessary strain on the resources that may be needed elsewhere during this emergency event. If barricades and traffic control devices are in place, they're there for a reason. Do not drive around or through them. People who drive past or around or through a barricade or a traffic control device face up to a $500 fine. If you are convicted and need to be rescued, you are also responsible by law for the costs associated with all responding emergency agencies. That can be significant. If anyone encounters a flooded roadway, downed trees, utility and power lines, please call 911 and report them immediately, but stay away from them. If you must travel, remember, if your wipers are on, your headlights must be also. It's not a recommendation, it is the law. Don't just rely on automatic headlights either. Actually turn the headlight system on to ensure they are. Follow posted speed limits, but remember to also drive appropriately for the conditions that exist. The heavy rain could hinder your visibility and make stopping difficult. Lastly, have a plan in place and think about the places that are prone to flooding and make sure you avoid them. Take a different route, or if you can, please stay home. Thank you. I will now turn it over to Director Padfield to address any questions you may have.
Thank you. We will now take on-topic questions, and we ask that the reporters use the hand raise feature. Our first question comes from Crispin Havener from WJAC. Crispin, go ahead.
All right. Obviously, we've known this was going to happen for a day or two, but we see to have a lot of schools and local officials that seem to be caught off guard and only now are starting to close things as the rains come through and starting to get flooding conditions in Cambria and Blair counties and the general region. Is this something that, maybe local officials should have maybe been a little bit more ahead of? Because I know you guys talked about your preemptive measures you've taken, but like I said, it seems like a lot more people are being caught off guard today, and now they're having people, like schools are closing as we're in the worst of this, as the flooding is happening.
So that's a very good question. I can't speak to the decisions of the school districts or anything else, but what I can tell you is that a lot of these systems are very dynamic. And, a weather forecast is a snapshot in time, and a projection is a snapshot in time for a lot of these. And that's why we continually go back and take a look at things. Late yesterday, there was an update, as Jeff Jumper discussed, in the warning category and they bumped it up to the highest category for severe flash flooding. We don't see those all that often, but that was a recent change as of late yesterday. So being able to react to those changes and use that information to inform your decisions is really critical. What we try to do at Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency is work with the counties and the emergency management coordinators in the counties to distribute this information far and wide. The National Weather Service does this as well, to be able to update everyone's awareness of what is expected so they can actually use that information to make good informed decisions.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mark Scalforo from the Associated Press. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, good morning. Two questions. One is, you mentioned National Guard being deployed. Can you tell me how many troops are involved and where they're being sent? And secondarily, with the heavy rain on what's already wet soil, leaves on the trees, how big a threat is, or how big of a concern are power outages?
So your first question, National Guard, we have over 100 National Guard actually deployed. Most of them are in strategic locations across the areas that are going to see the highest impact. So we have them in their actual facilities, and they are staffing high clearance or high water vehicles to be able to assist with local evacuation if needed. We also have a contingent of National Guard that is associated with the Pennsylvania Helicopter Aquatic Rescue Team, which is a joint venture between the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, the National Guard, and our agency. And they are supporting the aviation flight facilities and the rescue technicians that are pre-staged at those facilities to be able to respond as needed for any critical situations where people are in need of immediate rescue. The second question, and somebody will have to remind me. Oh, power outages. Okay, sorry about that. So power outages, we are concerned. So with the foliage on the trees and a wet ground, we monitor power outages. It's part of what we normally do. We have the PUC that is working with us in the Commonwealth Response Coordination Center. And we have really continuous and real-time power outage monitoring, so that if we see a significant outage in a county, we'll a lot of times reach out to that county to find out what the issue is, work with the PUC to take a look at estimated times of restoration, and also take a look at any impacted critical infrastructure, such as nursing homes, hospitals, or any other pieces of infrastructure that we have to be worried about if they go on backup power, all the other things. We also have the Governor's Office of Homeland Security staffing the Commonwealth Response Coordination Center, and they have a specific individual that is looking at the critical critical infrastructure that they monitor across the state and working with the providers to make sure that they have no unmet needs.
Thank you. Next, we have Jim Melwart from KYW. Go ahead, Jim.
This is kind of hypothetical and could be a unique situation, but a lot of times you mentioned, we always hear don't drive into rising water, but a lot of times you hear people are stuck in traffic on a highway or whatever with traffic not moving and the water comes up. What do you do in that situation? If you're in the car, what's your advice to people if they're in a car and all of a sudden water comes up? What's the best way to survive that, I guess?
Well, and that's a good question. It depends a lot on the situation and whether it's moving water or whether it's stationary water. You know, the best thing to do is try to get to high ground, and if you can, get out of the car and execute, your own evacuation if the water is not moving. However, your best recourse is always to dial 911 first to be able to make sure that we have the appropriate response agencies responding to be able to assist. The challenge is with moving water, if you get into a situation where the vehicle is moving, that's a much different situation. That's highly hazardous. But the key here is making sure that 911 knows of those situations, knows your current situation so they can get the appropriate response resources headed in the right direction. It's kind of hard to give you a one-size-fits-all answer depending on the situation.
And just a quick follow-up to that, with the $500 fine, I'm assuming that if it's out of your control, there's a gray area there, right? Like, people shouldn't be scared to call 911 because they're worried about getting fined.
I would defer to state police on this, but they should not be concerned about getting fined and should call 911, especially if their life is in jeopardy. We want to make sure that we can get the right resources to them because these situations change dramatically. We have seen rapidly rising water where it may be at the floorboards of the car, and by the time the emergency services providers and first responders get there, it's definitely inside the compartment and, up to the seats. So these conditions change rapidly, and we want to make sure that there's no delay in getting the proper response resources there.
Thank you. Next, we have Taylor Toshef from ABC 27. Go ahead, Taylor.
Hi, thank you for having this today. Can you just reiterate again the dangers of being out on the roadways or going out to look at flooding?
Melissa, I don't know if you want to, I'll turn that over.
Yes, really what you're looking at is the amount of rain that we've had leading up to this event, and the event itself makes the soil itself very unstable, very unpredictable. So you have the real risk of, as you're looking at that, not only the changing conditions that Director Padfield just spoke of, where the waters can come up and potentially sweep you away, but you have the instability of the roadway itself, of the soil around that, and even potentially the bridges. That's why we have our inspection crews that go out and inspect those bridges after they've seen a flooding event, even after the rain, once those rains go down. So again, it's just very critical that folks really don't go about trying to get close to that to get their camera shot, and just stay home, be safe.
Thank you. Next, we have Ron Southwick from PennLive. Go ahead, Ron.
Yes, thanks for doing this. I just wanted to ask, with the weather projected to worsen, are state workers being directed to go home earlier or being encouraged to go home earlier, or any state offices going to be closing early to get people off the road sooner than later?
You want to?
Yes, state workers in the affected areas are in fact being let off early today.
Does that include central Pennsylvania?
That especially includes south central Pennsylvania, yeah.
Thank you. Next, we have Sam Dunklaw from WITF. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, thanks for having this. Director Padfield, I don't know if, you've sort of addressed this already, but just kind of looking ahead, what are you and others thinking in terms of how long the state could be dealing with the impacts of the storm with rising rivers and streams and flooding and so forth?
Well, it's definitely going to be a multi-day event. As Jeff will probably tell you, is that, really when we take a look at riverine flooding, we need the water into really the basins to be able to get good projections on what the crests on these rivers are going to look like. But we know that the rivers and the tributaries are running high this time of year to start with. We know there's a lot of ground saturation already in a lot of areas of the state. So we're anticipating multiple days. In reality, the response phase of the operation will last, 12, 18, 24 hours, 36 hours until we make sure that everybody's out of harm's way, everybody's rescued, anybody that needs rescued, we can get into shelters or temporary locations, those types of things. But then really, concurrently, we are looking at, this morning we're discussing damage assessments and how we're going to go back or about damage assessments, work with our county emergency management partners, work with the local emergency managers, the townships and municipalities to conduct those damage assessments, to be able to get good information to see whether we reach the federal thresholds for disaster declaration and additional federal assistance. So that work will be occurring for a number of weeks afterwards, while we're still trying to handle the needs of anybody that's adversely impacted by this incident.
Our next question comes from Lauren Make from NBC 10. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you. Good morning. For folks in areas that have recently been had flood damage, and I'm thinking about areas like Bucks County in our area, who may still be, repairing their homes from there. First of all, have you done anything to sort of specifically protect those areas where you have had recent flooding? And then second of all, what is your message to folks in that area, in those areas that have recently had those flooding issues?
So, unfortunately, we do see situations where there is flooding and then, weeks or months later, there is repeated flooding. Really, the counties are, much closer to that. So they really work with those individuals that are impacted to provide any support that they can. The challenge with flooding is we see a lot of places that flood that have never flooded before. So trying to locate and realize where this flooding is going to occur and predict it is very difficult for us to be able to do that. We have the ability to be able to do hazard mitigation projects and be able to receive federal funding to be able to do that. The challenge is they are multi-year projects or they are longer projects to be able to really build back more resilient and be able to, in flood-prone areas, protect from the impacts of future flooding. So we always take a look at that, but the immediate concerns of things, to be able to prevent a repeat occurrence in some of these areas where it occurred, it's really going to be kind of led by the counties. And obviously, if they need any assistance, then they route that to us.
Thank you, reporters, for your questions. Thank you to Governor Wolf, Jeff Jumper, Randy Padfield, Melissa Petula, and Major Robert Kroll. That concludes today's press conference.
Oh, yes, okay.
Interstate 81. Google Maps she'd understand completely then by seeing that.
I don't know of anybody calling you from here since median. So he thinks it's a southbound event, but it's the northbound's
Okay.
affected because of it.